I guess I should give some background on how we ended up here stealing Isaac's time. Also, I just thank you for bringing the family out. When we were talking, we planned this whole thing around when his baby was supposed to be asleep. So what happened there?
That's correct. They just left and went upstairs to go to sleep.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I hope they weren't waiting for this. I'd feel bad.
No, my wife's she's more tech savvy than me, and I'm trying to get on Safari, and then it was not working, and she was she calls me Totoro, and she's like, Totoro, just try Google Chrome, and then I'm I clicked the wrong thing. I'm the microphone's not working. She's like, get out of the way, hold Lucy, and then she fixed it.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad she was here.
Yeah.
Now we're here with Isaac. Also, Isaac, forgive me. I did not even want to take an attempt at your last name. Clark,
I will.
Clark, you got one? Okay.
Go for it, guys. You guys, how about you guys take turns and we'll see if anyone gets close.
Oh, no. Okay.
I'm going to say Gabaeff.
Close. Just sound it out.
Isaac, I couldn't get your first name right when it was.
It's Isaac. It's just Isaac now. That's what it is. No, it's Gabaeff is the last name.
Ooh, I think I would have went Gabaeff.
Gabaeff, yeah. It's often butchered. There was definitely a discussion at some point about whether I should just use my middle name as a stage name, which is Lee. Lee is kind of a non-denominational name. It could be Asian, could be black, could be white, could be anything. I don't know.
Could be Confederate.
Actually, God, that is
true. There was
true.
definitely a little family blowback. People were like, "What the fuck? Our name is not good enough for you," And I was like, "You know what? It's a modern age. Let's go with Gabaeff." It's just I've had my favorite misspelling of the name was on a letter that I received, a piece of junk mail that said Isaac Go Beat Off.
Oh.
Was that a command?
Either that's some IA just getting it wrong, or that's some person
Well, Isaac, you ended up trapped. Actually, it's funny. Last week we had a guest on who we credited as Dutch, and he also was using his middle name. So, yeah, I don't know. Use it as an argument.
As in his name is Dutch, not his nationality.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That could be confusing.
Yes.
Okay. Now, Isaac, you're here trapped with us because, a few weeks ago, Clark, he took a vacation for the first time in 5 years, and he was gone for a month. And because I have some weird thing. I have to constantly be productive and moving forward. Otherwise, I'm alone with my thoughts and I get really weird. And I was like, I'll keep it going. And instead of a guest show, we'll cut it down to one and we'll have guest hosts on, which was a great idea, Clark. Now, every guest host showed up nervous, and I'm like, well, why don't you pick any movie you want? Just give me one, and I'll watch it, and we can talk about it, and it will be kind of like a easy introduction, and it will lubricate the conversation.
Ew.
And I'm not happy with that either.
Yep.
And we had our final guest host, Charlie Dickey, came on, and he sent me a DM, and the first movie in there was The Sand. I didn't even realize there was another movie, which he called me out on the episode because I didn't even read it. I just looked at the what the hell do you call that? The preview of the message, and I was like, okay, The Sand. And Charlie's quirky, and he'll watch films that most people wouldn't approach, even if they're a horror fan and they're dollar bin at, I don't know, Walmart or something. So I'm like, he's probably got a deep cut, cool thing right here that I might just have to power through. And it was your movie, The Sand. And I think his only pitch was, if you want to watch a thing to talk about, why don't you pop on Tubi and watch exactly what Tubi's here for, this overlooked movie, The Sand. And I if you do any amount of research, you're like, wait, there's sand eating people on a beach? Okay. Instantly, that paints kind of like a sci-fi picture. And it really lowered the bar coming in, and I was shocked. And did you go back and listen to my review of it?
I haven't. I really was trying to catch time to do that, and it's been nuts because I just haven't had a day off up until the last 3 days with Christmas. I was almost going to try to get to it this morning, and I apologize about that too.
Excuses, dude.
I will get to it though.
It's not a big deal. I'm sure you'll get enough compliments here. Anyway, my thesis of the film was kind of there's no reason this movie should be anywhere near as good as it is. And as a fan, on the show we talk a lot about how we don't line up with so bad it's good. So I go into the movies like The Room, and I kind of look at that as a misarticulation of a foreigner trying to understand American culture. And it's beautiful. Like you get a window into his mind, like this bizarre world he's created. So, I come into these things and I try to like really pay attention, and I'm just like, oh, this is just good. Like normally I have to formulate some sort of argument, but your film takes an absurd premise and it just plays it straight, but is also self-aware, and there's just good dramatic acting. And I think the only thing you could really complain about is the CGI, but I'm sure we could get into that because you also have great special effects here. So thank you for joining us, and I hope The Sand is a positive memory.
The Sand is definitely a positive memory. I appreciate all those kind words. That like, without getting too personal about it, that like makes me happy when someone has that like impression of the film, because like the film is like in a way meant to be taken a certain way, and yet the filmmaker is never going to get to explain that, especially with a movie like The Sand. Like it gets made and then it gets out there. So I feel like if you get it, that's fantastic. If you don't get it, that's also okay. Just because you can't control what people, how they respond to the material. And so, the film played at Film 4 Fright Fest, and there was like a rash of reviews that basically said something to the effect of what you're saying. And that helped to kind of set it in a right place. And that's what got it sold at Showtime. It got picked up like by Icon, who did like, who distributed It Follows and like a couple other things. And then, like Showtime was concerned. I don't know if you guys know this, is by the time it's on Tubi, it's back to The Sand. When it was on Showtime, it was like they changed the title of the movie to Blood Sand.
Oh.
Which they sort of had, they were like, we want to be sure that people are knowing that this is a horror movie and not, like The Sand. What is that? They don't know. A horror, if it's in the horror category, sure, but like just on whatever first look. So they changed the title, and then Showtime played that movie. Like, and I'm not sure, I don't want to date you guys in terms of like how old you are, but like when I was a kid, they used to have these things that we kind of call them HBO movie of the month, where they would just play the movie like over and over again, like every day or every other day they'd play that movie at some point. And essentially Showtime did that. They played that movie, our movie, The Sand, like every day or every other day for 2 years.
Wow.
So a lot of people ended up seeing that movie who didn't even know that like I had anything to do with it, or just randomly, like the way that they just sort of pummel people with like material, they did that. So by the time it got to Tubi, I'm not even sure because I don't have Tubi, but someone had reached out to me to say like, hey, your movie's like in some top trending thing on Tubi. So I was sort of like not surprised to hear that that's where you guys had seen it randomly, because to me somehow the movie just like it won't die.
Yeah.
It keeps popping up somehow, and people keep finding a way to like enjoy the movie. Like, I don't know, like 2 years ago someone sent me this Reddit like thread. It was like the funniest fucking thing I've ever read. Like just like thousands of comments, just of people talking about how the movie was sucked, or it was good, or they loved it, or they hated it, or whatever, with many Star Wars references to Anakin Skywalker.
What? Why Anakin?
Well, I guess in the prequel movies, he has something in the prequels where he says something like, I hate the sand and it's coarse. And it's, he's talking about Tatooine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, that's pretty good. You have memes of that? Now, it's funny because you talk about a film fest, understanding your film, and then it kind of getting out. I remember when I learned this, and we had a homie fly out here to show his film, 1974, La Possession de Altier, which is a shot on film, found footage movie that
8mm.
8mm. It just works, and it's really interesting. It's foreign. It's got good scares in it. And I remember we're sitting there as programmers for the Unnamed Footage Festival, and we're like, how does a movie like this not just take off? Like, how do people not just get it? And we showed it and everybody loved it. And I remember we were hanging out with the director at a bar next door called Dimples. And I'm like, dude, your movie fucking rules. What's up? Why don't you have distribution? He's like, hey, man. He just put his arm on my shoulder. He's like, every time I play a film fest, this happens. Everybody, they love it and they understand it. He's like, you show that to an audience that's not like, paying to sit in a seat, or it's on TV, and, it doesn't work so well. And I think that's what's happening with you. Also, with The Sand, you come in and you kind of you're prejudging that movie already hard. I know I was, and I was kind of trying to have an open mind, but
we have a hard heart.
I do have a hard heart.
That's the beauty of it, though. You can just, like, I don't know if that's specific to me or something else, because like I've seen those sci-fi movies, and one of our producers on that movie who had helped produce the other feature that I've done, which isn't really like out yet, which is like a much weirder movie. It's not a horror movie. It combines like live action and animation. It's called The Art of Storytelling.
Oh.
And it's about this low budget film production. Anyway, the guy who was the producer on that movie, he had produced, I think, like 10 or 13 films for sci-fi. So when this situation had come up to do the movie, I pretty much like knew he was the right guy to like call and say like, hey, will you do this? Because this was like in his repertoire of like how to produce a film for $500,000 or under, and part of what happened, just like the backstory that no one else was going to understand about this, is that really I was supposed to make this entirely different movie. It was this movie called Where Are You Going, which is about 4 people who are on a boat sailing between the islands in Hawaii. It's like, not to get too artsy, cinematic-y and indie
please
about
do.
it, but it was, it's like about the shifting sexual, social dynamics between these 2 guys and 2 girls.
Wow.
So this alpha guy and his buddy, they own a boat. They have a girl who's like their matey who kind of goes along with them, and she's got one of the nicer guy and her have like, like a friendship. There's something between them. She's got a boyfriend. The premise of the movie is that she's just broken up with her boyfriend, is going to tell him like, we broke up, and use that as some chance for them to get together. And he invites this other girl who's like his fuck buddy to come along on the thing. And as the 4 people are just trapped inside this closed space of the boat and the ocean, all this stuff unfolds over the course of like a few days. So we were going to make that movie, and we had, Sebastian Stan, Olivia Thirlby, Kyle Gallner, and this actress Troy Belisario were going to play those parts. And when Olivia had to drop out of the movie to do some other movie, and we couldn't rework the scheduling, we lost, the whole project just fell apart. Basically, we couldn't replace her for like in the short amount of time that they wanted to. So by my account, everything was just over. And then, it's like almost, I mean, it sounds like made up, but it's not. It's like I literally was watching this Roger Corman documentary at 10 o'clock in the morning, and there was like an interview with Peter Bogdanovich, and he's talking about, oh, I wanted to be a director, and I worked for Harvey, and he told me that if I came along to Ireland and they had shot half a movie somewhere that they couldn't finish, and he said, if you can think up a story that goes along with this footage and finish the film, I'll give you the crew on the weekend and you can become a director. And I'm like watching this going like, wow, that's like amazing to me that like this guy who's this amazing filmmaker that people love somehow like was working for this guy making B horror stuff, and then did like the Last Picture Show. I think he did like 2 pictures for Harvey. And, if you don't know about Harvey Korman, I'm sure you guys do, but like if anyone doesn't, Harvey Korman's like the most produced, producer in all of Hollywood history. He makes these schlocky movies, made a lot of money doing it. And a million like amazing people went through the Harvey Korman school of like learning how to make films and then going on to doing something very special with their lives. Not to draw too much parallel between Harvey Korman and I, but I literally was watching the scene. The producers called me and said, like, what's going on? Like, and I'm thinking like the movie is dead. We don't have it. There's nothing happening. And they're like, we have a problem. And I'm like, what problem? Like, what are you guys calling me? You have a problem. Like, I'm the one who lost the movie. I worked for a year and a half on this. And they were like, we have to make a movie. We signed a contract. We're going to take the money and make a film. And it doesn't matter that we're not going to make Where Are You Going? We have to make a movie by January. This is in early November. And so we want you to direct this movie. We just don't know what this movie is. We don't even have a script, but we're going to find one. And you have to give us an answer today. What do you think? And I said, yeah, let's do it. I mean, this is like adventures in filmmaking. This doesn't get weirder than this. And I'm like, this is fate telling you, make this fucking movie. Just say yes, you got to do it. It's a paid gig. And so we started reading scripts, and like, it sounds stupid to say, but The Sand was the best that we could find.
What were some of the ones that you instantly rejected? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, I remember. There was one that was called Psychotherapy, which was about it was like about a nerdy guy who is like goes to see a therapist, and like the patient before him is this like psychotic biker who like, you know, weasels his way into the guy's life, like I think it starts out like the guy comes out from the session after meeting this guy, he's trouble. And then like his tires are, been slashed, and he's like, oh, my car, and then this guy comes up like, hey man, you need a ride? And, like that type of thing. Like it weasels his way into this guy's life. It was like, I was like, imagine like Rick Moranis or like Tim Kazurinsky or something, like one of those guys, like the dude, and just like the guy from Raising Arizona, the like evil biker guy.
Now, the movies like that are kind of made or broken by their casting. And I feel like at least that seems approachable, if boring. So how the hell do you land on a movie that requires sand to eat your cast? Like, it seems like such a more like daunting production.
Well, I feel like you got to work off a little bit like what speaks to you. And this was like, unlike other, I don't know, like premises for how people would get to making a movie. There was like a little bit of a democratic process because we had the producers too. Like, what do you think we can do and how can we do this? And, any movie is like presents its own problems, like I felt like The Sand. I'm like, I understand this humor enough. I feel like I get this movie that I could like try to do the movie justice in some way. Of course, that might completely fucking fail, but maybe you're lucky. Maybe you're a little bit like know what you're doing, or who knows. But there's like many different things that happen too. I mean, in terms of like the effects, where we were talking to like one of the producers guys, and he was saying like, if you want the fire on the beach, a flaming tentacle, like that's $50,000. And we're like, $50,000? Like, how's that possible? There's got to be someone out there who could do that. And he's like, that's it. I work in TV, and if you want a flaming tentacle, 50 grand, Like, So you move on from him, and the guys that we got to do all of the effects were like these younger, like upstarts, and they get like pieces of films kind of farmed out to them, so they had done some stuff for like 20th Century Fox for like a young X-Men and some other things, and they thought they could do it. Not to be unfair to them, but I don't want to be like let's say I don't want to be like shy about it, like they definitely bit off more than they could chew and did not deliver all of the shots that were promised on the film. And so that's just part of filmmaking, period, too, is like, how do you roll with, not to get like instructional about it, but it's like, how do you roll with just shit that's happening? If you don't have the shot that you need, like, pump, what can you do to pump up the sound design or something like that?
Yeah.
If you can't get stuff because people try to figure it out. And also, to be fair, like the effects guys, like, not like I don't hate the effects. The effects are what they are, but it was like we had them there every day on set. There's a mix of practical and computer stuff, and I'm sure in everyone's mind, you're like, this is gonna look like the greatest thing you've ever seen. This is going to be fucking Star Wars. And then you get it and you're all, well, close enough. Okay. It's the sand.
Okay, Isaac, I got a bunch of things to mention here. One, the special effects are peaks and valleys for sure. I think your practical, they look great. The CGI looks like anything you would expect from like sci-fi, which is, not great. I mean, you get the uncanny valley thing there, but it works. So, hey, don't worry about it. Now, it's funny that you mentioned Roger Corman, because I should clarify, when I mention sci-fi movie, I don't like, there's nothing against Sci-Fi Channel. I actually like that channel, or I used to. What I think I'm articulating there is just that Corman style of, let's make a movie, and sometimes there's not a lot of heart in it. So when you get
just a quick turnaround,
yeah, you get like low-level studio production, and it kind of feels like impersonal and rushed.
just on to the next one.
Yeah, so if the filmmakers are boring or bored with their film, the audience is going to kind of walk away from that too. And it's usually concept, not a lot of execution. Also, your first film sounds amazing. That four-way relationship drama on the ocean instantly reminded me of The Knife in the Water, which was one of my favorite experiences that I had in the brief film school I took.
And it's been 4 or 5 episodes since you've mentioned Knife in the Water, so good for you.
Well, I'm very educated in film theory. No,
it is.
I love Polanski, and he's got a lot of, like, he's a
good guy, Polanski.
I was going to say, the most interesting artists are usually the most troubled humans.
The most rapey humans.
Yeah, the most rapey. Well, I mean, Knife in the Water, the thing about The Knife in the Water is there's 3 people on a boat, and there's one knife, and there's a power struggle and a relationship quandary.
Oh, I've seen the film many times.
Yeah, see, so I'm curious now, did you have a crew ready to make a like modern age Polanski tale of gender play on the ocean, and you pivot them into a sci-fi kind of horror film?
Also, was Gender Play on the Ocean the working title?
Yeah, with the shifting tides of the crew. No, there was like a semi-assembled crew that was supposed to go to Hawaii, and then when we didn't go to Hawaii, we had like it was a completely different crew of people who were there in Ventura, which is like, we went to this place called Surfers Cove, and we shot the entire thing in this area. We scouted like a few different beaches, and there's an interesting like friendship between like film and commerce. So like the city of Ventura was very much like, they wanted us to come there and like all stay in the hotel and use the production money, which would go to things in the city of Ventura. So they said, hey, we can like move this, the lifeguard tower wherever you want, and we can help accommodate you guys with this little, beach. I mean, that's not in all not a big thing. They just put it on this little tractor and slide it. It's on like sleds, but they're like, we will set it up for you and, keep the beach kind of closed for you guys or whatever, for whatever. We only filmed 12 days. So
yeah.
And then we, get the whole cast and crew up in this hotel there. And, that was its own like kind of reality TV show, just having the cast members there.
When you're talking about shifting films, I imagine that you had this like French highbrow cinematographer, and then the next day you hit him up and you're like, hey, we're doing a beach horror movie now.
Oh, I can tell you this: the cinematographer for the first movie just dropped the fuck off the face of the earth. He was like, "We're not making this. Okay, I'm out of here."
Yeah.
So that's fine too. That's you learn. There's a lot of little hard lessons learned about people's allegiances as like things do or don't coalesce in any specific direction. And just to be fair to that movie, Where Are You Going is it's not that comparable to Knife in the Water. Maybe some similar elements, but at that time I never had seen Knife in the Water, and I didn't want to. I was like, I watched it after the movie was written and going into production, that I was like, I've heard this movie is similar, but I like try not to do that. That was another thing too with The Sand, is that later everyone started comparing it to Blood Beach, which is another movie I have never seen yet and had never heard of when we made The Sand. I'm guessing maybe the writers had, but I don't know.
Yeah, Blood Beach, actually, Charlie recommended it would make a good double feature. And I think he's right, because really the movies are completely different with a similar idea.
So, but I think that, the marketing people too, if I'm correct, they like to steal things that they think work. And they sort of, borrowed the element of Blood Beach for the poster of the sand, which is the girl going like, getting swallowed by the sand or something like that.
Oh, I had no idea. I'm not a huge fan of Blood Beach. Like, don't kill me out there, people listening, but it's one of those, like, I don't know. I mean, I own it, if that gets me any cred, but I like the sand more, honestly.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You get the cred in my book.
Yeah, you made the superior The Beach is Gonna Eat You movie. Also, I found it curious to hear about you talking about the special effects department. I think when I reviewed your film, I had assumed you were an FX guy because I look at your credits on IMDb and you have 76 in the art department.
That's true. Well, I've worked in crew like for a very long time, and I've had like a pretty, not that this is like your audition for a job here, but it's like I went to school for animation, and then I worked on James and the Giant Peach when I was on my way out of college, and like just have done a lot of different stuff. Ended up in the art department, but not in the effects department, not at all. Like I wouldn't say I don't know anything about effects, but I know a fair bit from being on set for 20 years and like watching how things are done, especially like have absorbed a level of seeing how it works on like some really big movies. If you look at the list, like I did worked on Men in Black 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2, and those things were like some of those times for specifically those movies I worked on like the stunt units or something. So like on Men in Black 3, I worked for a month on this sequence where they travel through time and they do this car chase all around the city. And I mean, it's probably a minute and a half of the film, but like it was, definitely a little bit of like a master class in watching how the effects are and then seeing how they are in the movie. Same thing with the Amazing Spider-Man 2. I worked for a month, like on all night shoots for a month at the scene at the like Times Square when Electro comes to life and just destroys Times Square. And like they had built a fake Times Square out in Long Island at this huge like studio in this open lot, and we just filmed like elements of that scene for a month, and then to see it in the movie, it's like a minute. So we got like effects guys to come in, and then we talked everything through. We actually did this thing, this like previs where they created the set, and then we like used all these, like little crummy 3D models, and we like made them say the words and stuff, like Marja, look out. It's going to hit you. We showed that to the actors too, just to kind of show like, hey, this is how we have like A, B, and C planned out. Like right before we did this table read with them, and it was like, I think I said something like, "You guys are all fired, and we're just going to make."
We were just talking about the Amazing Spider-Man 2 last night, right? That's like your favorite, isn't it, Clark?
Okay, no, Spider-Man 2, not the Amazing Spider-Man.
What's the Amazing Spider-Man then?
Andrew Garfield.
Oh, that's okay. I like Andrew Garfield.
Totally different movies.
Yeah.
No, I also like Andrew Garfield. I don't like him as Peter Parker.
Okay. All right. That's a different.
Andrew Garfield and I share a birthday.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is he from Mississippi too?
You know the answer.
Yeah, I know. Now, dude, you've got some credits in here. You like, I know one Oksana was interested about was Queer Eye. And then you got like Eat, Pray, Love. You got, like you said, Men in Black 3. But the one I like is The Place Beyond the Pines. You've had the great HBO failure known as Vinyl. Oh, you love that. I liked Vinyl.
I mean, give you guys tidbits about what I did on those jobs if you're interested in knowing, if you have a question specifically,
Well, I think it's a perfect opportunity as this is a podcast, and I think we can offer those avenues available.
Ask away. Let me dish the dirt,
I know you want to ask about Vinyl. Go ahead.
I mean, what is there to ask about Vinyl? Did you know it was going to be the most expensive failure in the history of television?
I mean, not really. And when I was worked on vinyl, like I've done all these different jobs. Like aside from directing, I've done these different jobs because like just in reference to directing, I feel like part of what a lot of people who are directors don't necessarily get, and this is not to like say one is better than the other, but like there's like an old joke that like a director and a PA are the two people on a set who know the least about it, And conversely, I would say that it's like the opposite for me because I've been a set dresser, I've been an on-set dresser, I've been an on-set props, a prop master, I've done production design, I've done greens, and done all these different things, in service of other people's stories and working on as a part of their team.
Sure.
So it specifically with vinyl, I was part of the greens department, and that was like the easiest job in the world for me. I would spend some of the days on set when they would have a lot of plants, and I would move those plants around and prune them and kind of crush and kill the plants to whatever the production's liking was. Oh, we need this big plant that's got to fit in this tiny thing, and you just hack the root ball off. That's it, and then put in this thing or whatever. When we did the pilot, there was like the house that Bobby Cannavale lives in.
Yeah.
The people who own it live it's out in Sands Point in Long Island on the water. And the people who lived there had this gigantic pirate ship like playland that was something that they had kept from their kids. And they had like told us in the production, like, we love it. We don't want to get rid of it or whatever. And so like the designer was like, we got to figure out a way around this. And so the greens guy I worked for, he said like, we're going to, create these sticks, this wall or whatever. We're going to cut up a bunch of these evergreen plants and we're going to stack them. It's going to go like deep in the background so that when you look at it, it looks like a hedge. It's going to go in front of this pirate ship. So you really, if you know what you're looking at in the pilot, you'll never see what you're supposed to not be seeing. That's the idea. And so I went down to this nursery with him. And I mean, obviously the people who are listening to the podcast, you can't see what I look like, but like, I roll down to the nursery and I go like, all right, I need like, 20 of these evergreen plants. They got to be like 8 to 10 feet tall. And the guy was like, oh, my this is great. Let's take a look at these beauties, And I'm like, oh, I can already tell this guy loves plants. He's not going to like this, And I go like, $15,000 worth of plants on the production bill. And then I was like, do you guys have a, like a dumpster here? And he's like, a dumpster? Why? And I said, I'm going to have to cut off all the root balls of the plants. And he was like, what? You can't do that. These plants are 15 years old. And I'm like, yeah, unfortunately, this is the way it works. So sorry. And then just ripped open this chainsaw and just killing the plants so that we could construct this thing. And the look on the guy's face was like, he's horrified,
But his pockets are full.
Well, this is why capitalism loves the film business. They spend all this money and then they just, like it all gets torn down. It lives forever on film and that's it. And then like, aside from that, on vinyl, one of the things I used to do was just inside the American Century Records set, the designer wanted all real plants. So I had these like 50 different plants, and when they would call me ahead of time and I would go in and like water the plants and take care of them with like great care. That's what they paid for. That's what they got. So the first guy who did that job killed all the plants because they said, here, you're going to get paid 8 hours to go in there. It's really like an hour's worth of work. You go in, you water the plants delicately, get a little drip to them and make sure that they're like well fed. And that guy went in and just poured water on the things and ran out of there because he was like, yeah, I'm getting paid. And then all the plants died. So then they fired him and they asked me to do it.
Now, vinyl on IMDb says it came out in 2016. Did that film before The Sand or after?
I think, yeah, that filmed after The Sand. So
Right.
I was we'd already got it in the can. And then, I think we filmed it in 2014 or something like that, in December 2014. And then, finished it around like maybe April, May or something like that.
Now, was The Sand out already by the time you were on vinyl?
Yeah, I think maybe it was somewhere. I forget a little bit. It seems like, I guess it's like been a while. Just a lot of those things have like bled together, but I definitely never really stopped working in what I was doing. And for sure, there were people who like, knew that I had directed that movie. I feel like that's one of the funny things, without sounding too like, like wah wah about it, was like, you tell people, oh, we're going to go make this movie with Sebastian Stan and so, and all of a sudden you come back and you're like, we made The Sand.
But
like, what?
You also had Jamie Kennedy and Mitchell Musso in The Sand, so you still got name value.
Yeah, no, I'm not like overly a name whore about it too. I don't care. Just to that point, what you were bringing up was like about how you want to treat the movie. Something like The Sand was like, I, have worked, because of the working on TV and stuff. I had worked with a lot of directors who like, they have these great opportunities. They literally have the best job in the world, and they're up there fucking complaining about their job. Like, oh, I got to do this like fucking show or whatever. Like, if the show's not cool enough for them or something. And so when we did The Sand, I felt like really aware of that somehow. Like, like I felt the responsibility of that somehow. Like, I'm going to get in there and really try to do a decent job, like a good job. And I'm definitely not going to sit here and whine and complain about doing this movie, even though this is like an insane situation, like I was never supposed to be making this movie, but yet I want to treat it like I fucking care about every frame, every performance. And I mean, that was what was happening on set too. Some of the actors didn't need too much direction, and others, like, you had to work to get them, to where they're supposed to be. Or you're trying to get someone to cry or be sad about something, and like they don't, they can't get there in their mind, then you gotta work to like perpetuate a story about, or something about what they're supposed to feel based on something real that's happened. And that worked.
Or insult him.
Well, that's part of it too. I'd be like, it'd be a stretch for me. I don't know if anyone is ever going to be like listening to this, but like there is definitely a Kubrickian element to manipulating people when it comes to direction. I've seen a lot of people too, like, the benefit of working on shows and movies and stuff like that is getting to see how people can work to either like bolster or manipulate actors and get them to do things. And actors, they're sensitive people in a way, so that you can use that to your own device. I felt like I've seen some people get up there and they're, especially with big stars, they are really like, oh, that was great. You're so great. You were so great. And like, even when I was doing stuff, I felt like if someone wasn't doing something that I liked, I would say like, I'm sorry. I don't buy it. I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. Try again.
Damn.
You'd say something and you kind of like devastate them a little bit. Like you see the blood drain out of their face. Like, what the fuck? He just told me I'm terrible, And you're like, that's right. That was terrible. You can do better than that. Let's try again. And they,
Man,
see them like,
the picture here is really coming together for me, because at this time, just to give people context, you've had about 70 credits under your belt. So you're weathered, and you learned. I've been listening to a military podcast recently, and well, in the holidays, nobody puts anything up, so I'm out there exploring, and I heard a former SEAL team leader talk about the best kind of leadership you can have is humble. You just be a humble leader, and you need to listen to your team. It's interesting because I hear you kind of intuitively figuring that out here, and then you add on that, and you got to manipulate a little bit. And acting is a thing that I never want to do. The whole thing terrifies me, and when I trying to understand the brain of an actor is these people are almost completely the opposite in a mental state from like a regular civilian. Like, I live my life burying emotion. Like, if you came to me with that, I hate it, I don't believe it, I've trained myself to just like swallow that and like deal with it later.
Which is why you'll be dead by April.
I'm sure. But like actors, you have to be emotionally available on the drop of a dime if you want to be good at it.
Yeah.
So they become erratic and weird in public. And I could just imagine that crushing somebody on set. especially with people looking and they're like, I'm on this fucking dumb sand movie and this guy's ripping me up.
Well, part of it too is like, just to, like get into one detail there is just try crushing people a little bit in private. You don't want to call them out instead, like, and say like, with the megaphone, like, you suck, you're horrible. No, you don't do that. You just you get them in close, and it's like I would say like I'm working from my own limited experience, so none of this. It's not meant to sound too crackerjacky, wisdomish or anything, but it's like in essence, like the director is like the coach or someone. They many times in most situations, the actors like they want to please you, they want you to be happy. Either that or they're like egomaniacs and they're just going to do whatever they do and they're not going to listen to a fucking word you say or something to that effect. But I felt like part of the odd thing about this cast was that like they seem to like look up to me and want to like most of them want to do a good job, so that was part of the like interesting position to be in them, with like trying to get them to do something because of the way that we had to make that conscious decision about the movie. Like, are we trying to play the humor straight and like play the movie straight and let the humor come out, or are we trying to play the humor like as humor, like Zombievers or something, where it's just like we are in a movie and it's fucking ridiculous and we're in the audience and all of us are in on the joke. And I think that probably the producers were a little worried, even though they thought that was the best line of action for this movie, but they were a little worried, like, can Isaac pull it off? Is he gonna fuck this up? Like, which I feel like, you didn't, I didn't, and it's also like, let's get back to basics here. It's the sand. This is not, out of Africa or something. Like, you can take all this stuff. I don't know if anything that I did would have worked for a different director either. So, I mean, I try not really to think about that. You just try to stay focused on what you're doing yourself. But, it was an experience for the ages. And it was like, for me, because it was such an insane situation to be in as far as like, how the fuck did we end up, with 3 weeks of prep on this movie, but yet like we're doing it. So, and the DP, he was on a different project. He could barely even give me the time that we, needed in prep where you're sitting with that person every day. So that was another like, I wouldn't say stressful element, but it was a little bit like, well, let's just hopefully this turns out good, because we barely had the prep. So I had to kind of depend on him to be like, you're going to I'm going to let you do your thing a little more. And I have my shots and things that I want, and we can talk about that. But I was also, kind of, that was like right when you're starting out too, that's a delicate time too, where there's always a lot of personalities on set who want to try to take over your set and think they know better, and you have to kind of be a bullhead and sort of stand your ground about what's going on. As I think as like things have moved forward, you get to command a little more authority when you know everything about what you're talking about and why. But I think that was like one of those moments where there was like some touchy things that happened. I feel like people were trying to get in there and try to flex on stuff, and you had to kind of flex back to be like, keep control of the set.
Now, sure. In the pitch I got from Charlie, he mentioned we call him Birdman. He used to have a bird watching app that he did this bit that we thought was hilarious. So we just kind of gave him the name Birdman.
The bit was his life.
Yeah, the bit is his life. And he loves watching movies with animals. So everything he's covered, there's always an animal element. So when he sent me the sand, the animal element here, because I knew I was looking for it, was the seagull gets eaten by the beach. And honestly, that was one of the things that hooked me right off the bat. Now, I definitely want to hear about that. But the other thing, which I mentioned briefly earlier, that I'm sure has only been a negative for this film, was Mitchell Musso, who I non-ironically enjoyed Hannah Montana back in the day. I have 2 younger sisters, and there's a big age gap, like over a decade. And they would just eat it up. So I enjoyed the music. I mean, I've watched a lot of like Blues Clues in my life because they were so much younger, and I knew Mitchell Musso, but I'm also aware that people, the surrounding cast of a show where one person has a huge booming career, they're always the afterthought, and they always become a punchline of a joke. Like, oh, look at that, the loser from Hannah Montana. And I'm just curious how he got attached to the Sand, especially when he did.
Also, before you answer that, Isaac, the one thing you do need to know is that Russell can name, let's call it 10 actors.
Yeah, I'm not great with actor names.
So the fact that he knows Mitchell Musso, that's just setting you the base level of where we are here.
Well, I think occasionally this happens in this business. Has definitely happened with me, before. It was like, he came in and he tried out for the part of Jonah, and that's the that's like the jockey character.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who he was. I never seen Hannah Montana. I think that was a little, I'm 46, so that was a little before my time. But, to be fair, I like to watch television. I like to consume a lot of stuff, and I take some weird pride in knowing a lot about like actors, shows, things, stuff like that. So it's not like I didn't know what Hannah Montana was, but I honestly had never seen the show. So when he came in, he tried out for Jonah. I was like, I'm not really seeing this guy as Jonah, but I do see him as that character, as the kind of like he's like the nice guy who's like hoping to slip in there.
Yep.
That's that sort of type, because the film for sure deals in types of like, here's this, bitchy friend who's the cheater. And then here's like, you're kind of, the heroine of the movie. And then there's the jock, and there's, the fat guy. And there's like, all these different things. The Playboy bunny, she gets eaten right away. And there's like the other guy who got, he gets eaten pretty fast too. Everyone had something that they had done at that time, so go back, whatever, 6 years from now. And it was like, I think Dean Geyer played Jonah, had just had this like season arc on Glee. Hector David Jr., who was the guy who's doing all the acrobatics, who gets eaten right away. He was the Green Power Ranger. And then
hell yeah.
And then they had, the girl who played Chandra. I think she was just kind of up and coming. And I believe that she like went on to kind of have a little more of a TV career. And Brooke Butler and then Mitchell Musso. And so I don't know. I said, well, I don't know. I don't see him as Jonah, but what about this part? And they were kind of later when they were saying like, oh yeah, let's move forward with this guy. They were like, he was on Hannah Montana. I mean, I didn't really know that. So I was like, okay, I didn't really have to feel like I had that knowledge of what he was to like treat him in a certain way. But it never really like occurred to me later that was like a good or a bad thing. And
no, it's funny because you instinctively put him in the position that he was in on the show. Now, on the show, there are two like main leads that aren't her father in real life, and one of them is like her brother, who is one of those Disney adult men who look like they're 14 forever. And there's Mitchell Musso, who's the infinitely friend zone character on the show. So in this. Now, just to give a little bit of setup for The Sand, we open up with like this in-world camera vignette of people partying on the beach. And it's all these pretty people. Like we really get that low-level studio look of, oh, these are all aspiring actors who are beautiful people. And, they're like extras here, kind of. And then we have Mitchell Musso, who's looking a little rough compared to his Disney days, which actually I thought helped the film. Like it's like, oh, okay, Mitchell Musso.
What do you mean by a little rough?
In Disney, the production, he's just like everybody's looking 110%.
This is 15 years ago.
Now Mitchell Musso, he doesn't have that like boy next door charm that Disney would imprint on you.
Yeah,
and he's looking a little like he's trying to slide in with the good guy thing. And he's the one that kicks off the whole Vegas rules, which I thought was hilarious. And everyone's like, what does that mean? He's like, well, I'm taking all your phones, and whatever happens tonight, it stays here, like in Vegas. And they lock it up in a trunk. Beautiful way to deal with. So one thing, I hate it when horror movies feel the need to deal with the phone problem, because it always feels so like, it feels so tacked on, kind of like, hey, here's an obstacle we need to get over. You actually made it interesting, and I wasn't even thinking of it in that context. So when it happened, I was thinking, who's this creep? And then as the movie goes on, you learn he's the nice guy who's hanging out with the lead actress, trying to slip in on Vegas night that he invented. Dude, I thought it was brilliant.
He seemed like he actually had a shot at it too,
He
and
did.
what's funny too is that when I was young, when I was a kid, I was like,
Uh-oh.
I used to act too, and I was
Oh,
like
okay.
very, like small parts in the commercial here or there. And I lived down in San Diego, so I really was only going to like an audition a month. This was like for a few years. I had like an agent and whatever. You would go out on calls, and it was always like amazing to me, even as a young person, that I was like, you would kind of not rub elbows, but you'd see people who were like in shows. Like you remember going to this audition. This is deep dive here. Probably might be well before your time. There was a TV show called Small Wonder. Do you know about this show? Like
No
a
of it,
girl,
yes.
Vicky, who was a robot, and it was like this. I mean, it's kind of in that same era as Alf, and like there was a mom and a dad and a brother, and then they had this daughter who was like a robot or whatever. And the kid was like one of these, he looked like this nerdy chubby little kid. You'd see him on TV, you thought he was like 10 or something when I was 10. And then I went to like an audition and I see him there, and the guy's got like a cut off shirt, and he's got hairy armpits, and he's like a foot and a half taller than you've seen him on TV, and bad acne. And you were just like, oh my God, like look at these, like people grow up, so
Welcome to showbiz,
dude,
baby.
I've never heard of Small Wonder. Also, I'm curious how old you think I am. Go ahead, throw it out there, Isaac.
is this a trick question?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. You look maybe like you're in your late 20s, early 30s.
Oh man, I love it. I'm 36, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's that youthful spirit. I don't know. How old do you guys think? I mean, I already told you how old I am. Do I look?
I know. I'm a good listener too, Isaac, so I know. I'm sure Clark's. How old do you think he is?
He said he's 63.
Okay. And
Well,
you also look good for your age.
66, actually, but thank you. That's
No, so Small Wonder came out the year I was born in 85. And
okay.
I've never heard of it. I might have to look this up. Here, the IMDb synopsis is the zany adventures of a suburban family, their next door neighbors, and an innovative robot designed to look like a human child.
Yeah, that's right.
She looks terrifying.
Oh, it's a crazy show. But just you're looking at the guy. Look at the guy who plays the brother. Like, I think I ran into, when I was at that same audition, he was there, and so was Brian Austin Green.
Oh.
This was like pre even 90210 days. Like, I knew Brian Austin Green from this movie of the month, to bring this up again, like an HBO movie about a kid goes to visit their aunt in Venice, and they get like, they smoke weed and they go a party. They're like, live this kind of a latchkey life, latchkey summer or whatever. So it was like weird to me when you would see people, like whatever. So I know a lot of people know Mitchell Musso, and you see him and he's like more of an adult, I guess, than he was on the show where he was like a little kid. To me, I had no reference for that. And Mitchell especially is like this total sweetheart too. He's like this, wonderfully like earnest and like nice person. And he really, especially like for some reason, he took like a shine to me and was like, I really think you're like the coolest, and I want to do a great job in this movie, which, that's like endearing to me.
I bring him up not just because I was a fan of Hannah Montana, but also, again, in my long and lustrous career in film theory in school, Vertigo is one of my favorite things to think about, because I'm almost always like face blind when it comes to actors. And honestly, I think it helps horror movies not to be familiar with people, because it always brings an outside element. Like if you see Tony Todd pop up in a low budget horror movie, he's either going to die. He's either a 1-second cameo, which could involve dying, or he's the villain.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, dumb. Like if he shows up and he's the cable guy, it's like, oh, it's him.
If you guys, I mean, have been interviewing other people, has this not come up? Has anyone explained to you the like kind of behind the scenes rundown of how this works? If so, I would love to dispense with the illusion of what is going on in horror movies and just tell you how this works.
You've opened the door. We'll enter the house.
Yeah, pull the curtain back, please.
Let me unlock this door and you walk into it. Horror movies need an actor, a name value. So in our instance, like I was given a list of actors who I thought would be, who would meet that standard of being able to like sell this movie. There were the three top names on that list were, take this wild guess at the first two. You know who number 3 is because he's in the movie.
Hayden Christensen.
Wrong.
Damn it, Clark.
Oh, all right. So we're talking for the Jamie Kennedy role?
Yeah. Just right off the top of your head, I bet you, if you really, maybe I'm being too like
Danny Trejo.
Oh, that's not bad.
Close, but no cigar. Think horror movies and think that part.
Jim Cummings.
Okay, hold on. No, we can do this. This. Lorenzo Lamas.
Oh
God, that would have been amazing. The number one person that was on the top of that list, Bruce Campbell, for that part.
I think that it would have hammed it up too much.
Yeah,
I love Bruce Campbell. I don't know if I could have hammed it up more than Jamie Kennedy, but like Bruce Campbell, that was like, that's dream, material. Number 2.
Hold on. Before we move on from there.
Campbell, by the way, would have done it, but was not available that day, and we could not switch the days around.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I talked over you. What did you say?
He said he was available and he was going to do it. But he wasn't available.
And would have done it, but he was not available that day.
Oh, Bruce Campbell?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Here's the thing with Bruce. If he popped up out of that car, I have expectations with Bruce Campbell. And I would be like, oh, kind of excited. When Jamie Kennedy popped out of there, I'm like, oh no, we're making a weird hard turn here. And I was thinking it was going to be bad. And then Jamie came out and I loved him.
It was great.
It was literally like Mitchell Musso. I'm like, oh no, wash up movie. And then I'm like, oh, he's good. And you played 2 character, but kind of against where I thought it was going. Jamie Kennedy, low expectation, came out, loved him. So I don't know. I think the low expectation entry that you've created with everything just works for you.
Well, sometimes you get lucky, The other person that we tried to get, but we couldn't afford, which I thought would have been great for this, but not meant to be. So, like what happened, David Hasselhoff.
Oh,
that would have changed it too.
That would have changed it too. But, this is what you sign up for. We had a different person who was maybe going to play the lead of the movie, and something couldn't be worked out with her. And then that didn't happen. And she was a totally different look than Brooke Butler. And, we got Brooke, and that was all great too. So you never know, David Hasselhoff, I think, wanted like $60,000 for the day. We couldn't afford that. So,
wait, man,
but also I love Jamie Kennedy too. Like, Jamie and I talk like semi regularly, and Jamie was along the same, like sentiment that you are too, where he pretty much called me up after working on the movie because he's like, you take a part on these things, you're just there for like a day, and just assume they're going to turn out like dog shit, maybe or maybe not. But he was like, I actually love this movie, and he's like, I just felt like I was watching the movie thinking like, this is a lot better than I expected it to be. And I, will give you credit for that. So me and him still like, will talk occasionally, when necessary or something. He had tried to like put me up for a job or something like that, because he was like, I like what you did, but
that's rad,
dude. Well, I can imagine being in your shoes, Isaac, and you look at that list and you're like, Bruce Campbell, amazing, because that's, the part like just works for him. Or like David Hasselhoff, and you're like, amazing, because that, it just works. And then then what a departure with Jamie Kennedy. I mean, he's also got horror movie baggage, because in Scream, he's Randy, and he's the dude that people and they idolize, but he's also known as like the fourth wall breaker. He's kind of like the Deadpool of horror movies. So when he pops out, you just don't know what direction you're trying to like create here by having him on set, because an audience always assumes that Isaac made this movie exactly the way he wanted to, and
which is correct, actually.
yeah, and hey, that's privileged. I mean, your movie came out
like in a way, because there's so many random things that you really can't control, so you're trying to like move it around, and hopefully you get lucky too. We had this conversation with Jamie beforehand, and I just told him, like, look, we have the lines, and then we have you. So get in there and start riffing, and you can kind of say whatever you want, just let's do a bunch of takes, because I can throw out stuff too. Like, I'm into the whole, like, thinking of a bunch of different funny versions of lines and things like that. Like, that's kind of something that just happens in real life that, I think, like your brain can latch onto. But like, I mean, he's great at it. When I was a kid, or when I was like younger too, I was not a kid, but I was like maybe 25. I literally used to tape the Jamie Kennedy Experiment, and there was a TV show that was on after that called Blind Date.
Yeah, I remember.
It was in like 2001. I had this little TV VCR that was in my room, and you could set it to record. So I had one tape I would leave in there, and I was working long hours, so like, I think from midnight to 1, it would tape, Jamie Kennedy Experiment and Blind Date. And then I'd get home, I'd lay in bed and watch those movies. And then I would repeat the process the next day. And just, so I had them or whatever. It was like an early version of like DVR or something like that. You just had one tape. You just use it on repeat. And, it's like, it's kind of funny because I felt like even certain crew members are like, wow, Jamie Kennedy is going to be here. This must be like a really big deal for you, And I was just like, I mean, I guess, I don't know. What are you going to do? And then you sit down and he's like so funny and irreverent and cool that I was like, I mean, I just told him that. I was like, oh, yeah, dude. I'm like, I used to just tape the Jamie Kennedy Experiment and watch it when I got home every night. That's like my dream job, is just basically dressing up and fucking with people.
Now, I have to pound this home because as a horror fan, it's so perfect. Like Jamie Kennedy, he plays a cop who shows up in a situation where people desperately need help. So, as an audience member, you're like, here we go. We can save people. And then it's Jamie Kennedy who deflates horror movies and knows what to do. And he gets out of that goddamn car, doesn't get killed instantly. And you're like, wait, what's happening? He's broken it. And then he walks up and he's just like, what's going on here? Y'all lesbians?
Yeah.
And I love it. And
well, he's meant to bring that comic relief to the movie,
sure,
in a more like pronounced way, But the horror movies, like, they depend on the devices, so there has to be devices in place to like, bring hope at the right moment, or take away people's phones, because that's a thing. How do you get the phones out of people's hands? Otherwise, what if anyone just
called
police or called for help? Then you're like, then there's no movie.
Yeah,
and Isaac, the stuff that people will criticize, like, you may love that, and someone else is happy to get up there on social media, which is like, again, like, I'm not one of those type of people who's like phony, shy, or fake about like saying what they do. Like, some people are like, I don't read reviews of my films, I don't pay attention to what the social media says, and I'm like, fuck that. Okay, I want to know what people are saying, and I read all the reviews, good and bad. I want to know, what people like, what people don't. So, I feel like you develop a little bit of a thick skin,
Isaac, I think you might be a sadist, dude. Now, now normally whenever people who listen to the show for a long time now know, we normally meet people like live on here to record. And I actually had an opportunity. We spoke on the phone briefly before today, and Isaac straight up told me that he'll get like the typical death threats because somebody didn't like your movie. People will DM him that. Isaac will fucking answer them. And I don't know why you engage with this, but I think you like it. Now that I can see you over there smiling. Can you tell that story to Clark? Because he wasn't there when we were talking.
So, I've had, nobody's hit me up for a little while, because as the movie, is like slowly falls out of circulation. But I want to say over the course of like a few years, like every few months, I would get a DM from someone basically saying like, fuck you. I fucking hate you. I saw your movie and it was the worst piece of shit and I want to fucking kill you. Fuck your mother, like that type of shit. And sometimes from Americans, sometimes from foreigners. There was definitely an Arabic dude who hit me up, like, and you could just read in the writing the like, fuck you, motherfucker, I'm gonna fucking kill you, fuck you, the mother, you are shit, movie is shit, you suck, like that type of stuff. And then, yeah, I would like write them back and I have like a sort of basic response, which says like, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is thank you for giving me your time and watching this movie and sharing your thoughts with me. The bad news is you're never going to get that 90 minutes back of your life.
Would you follow up? Yeah, would you keep engaging?
Which oddly would elicit usually like a funny response from someone.
Yeah.
Like I think the last time that I got was some kids from Philly, if you know the slang, they were like, yo, motherfucker, we checked out your John and your John fucking sucks, Jans, like whatever they said, like that. And, people just, I don't know what they're doing out there, it doesn't, I feel like if you let it bother you, I can understand that. I do feel like The Sand is such a specific film that like you are allowed to not care about something like that, especially just as like this point of reference about it in terms of like everything I've told you guys, is like definitely some people said to me like, who had some impression of me as more serious filmmaker that they're like, don't make this film. Like this is not going to be good for you. Like I would not do that if I were you, that type of sentiment. And I always felt like, you know what? When it's your own movie and you wrote it, you are going to be a little more fucking psychotic about each shot and the performance and that. And for me, I was like, the upside of doing something like this is like, you get to cut your teeth on something that you're not so precious about. And so you can just get in there and kind of like allow yourself to try things and, I wouldn't say have fun because in a way, making movies not that fun of an experience in that way. Like it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of concentration and you got to be ready for a lot of stuff that's going to get like, come towards you. So I wouldn't describe it in fun in that way, but I felt like The Sand was a very specific situation that like it was a nice intro to allowing people to like shit on something you're doing without having to take it overly personal, that makes sense.
Isaac, that's a weird thing too. Now, clearly, like Clark and I, we love the type of film you made, and what we're really looking for is like heart and like real effort. And we've shown a film before, at Another Hole in the Head. I won't go into details on it, but we thought it was like it was bonkers and it was fucking hilarious. And one of our buddies played a Amazon Prime driver who gets who runs over a kid in like the first 5 minutes of the movie. And we knew, we're like, dude, show this in front of a crowd and it's gonna be a fucking blast. Now at the time we had a couple filmmakers out and they were staying at our house and we invited them out and they came and they'd been like living with Clark for a week and they're just like, oh, he's so nice, and you took him around and you showed him all the city. And we went to the screening and it was like room-esque where people were kind of laughing with the movie, maybe in an unintentional times, but there were applause breaks. People were screaming, laughing their fucking heads off, like just like laughing to the point of tears and headaches. And then it was at a film fest, so when they walked out and were rating it, people were giving it ones all over the place. And our filmmaker friends came up and said, hey, we just want to like talk to you. Like, we know you guys are like great people and you're nice and you opened up your home to us and you've taken care of us. Well, we just don't understand why you showed this movie. And me and Clark are looking at each other and we're like, what is wrong with this culture? Like, if a movie isn't like highbrow, by the books, perfect, then it's bad. And it's like, but I was in that fucking room. It was the best thing that showed that day.
It was fun.
It was so much fun. And people came out laughing. Everybody was talking about it. And then they're like, yeah, it fucking sucked. So I don't know what it is. There's something wrapped up in our id where if we enjoy art that we think is like less than perfect, we have to like shit on it or something. So I'm curious if those people DMing you, just aren't, I don't know if they haven't looked in and realized like, hey, me and my buddies were drinking and we had a blast watching The Sand. But at the end of the day, I went on IMDb and I gave it a 1 and a death threat. And they felt the need to tell you.
Well, that's the thing too, that, this film is such a particular, like, it's like a unique example of like when you could do something like that, and you could also just take a step back from all that too. It's like, I don't know, like, I understand everyone's issues with the culture and how like you could try to do something that's weird and shit. To me, horror is like such a one of the best things about horror as a genre is like you can do all this different stuff and try these different things and do stuff that's inappropriate in a way, almost like how comedy maybe a little more used to be, where you could really like say or do anything that you wanted, and that was like kind of off limits to someone saying like, hey, that's not acceptable or that's not this. And I'm like, horror is still somehow this territory that's like off limits to people, in essence saying like you can or can't do it. And so I can take people's opinions in stride about it. If people want to say your fucking movie sucks or you suck, that's okay, or if they don't get it, that's fine too. I just feel like you know that's like a common thread with people, and that's often repeated, and sometimes it makes sense, and sometimes it just sounds recycled when people say that. But like, like you make a piece of art or you do something and you put it out there, and it's not up to you like how people are going to respond to that. So you got to kind of like be prepared for anything good or bad that people might say. When people enjoy it, that's fantastic, and makes it really fun to like go into details or talk about it or tell the stories behind it. And if people hate it too, in a way, at first look, that's like, oh, that sucks, that like, well, it might hurt you or hurt your feelings. And at the same time, I'm like, you should be happy people are hating something enough to take the time to like write you and be like, fuck you, I want to kill you, I mean, hopefully nobody actually tries to kill you over how bad your movie is, but like that to me was the funniest fucking thing ever. So maybe I'm a sadist, I don't know.
No, yeah. Now, I'm going to take an opportunity. Isaac, if you ever go back and listen to the show, you'll probably hear Clark and even guest hosts giving me shit on how I rate movies. If I do a 1 to 5 thing, I do it on an emotional scale. So 5 is a movie that I love, which in no respect am I trying to reflect technical prowess or acting or anything. It's just, did I have a blast with it? And 1, movies I hate are movies that when people talk about them, I get like animated. Like I fucking hated World War Z, and I get like, I have to talk about it. So honestly, in my rating system, 3 is the worst because I feel apathetic normally to these films. Like they made no impression, and I forget I watched them.
It's a godlike complex you have where it's lukewarm water.
What do you
I like
mean?
that was almost Christopher Nolan-esque, the way that it required like a minutes long explanation.
Well, no, I feel like what you were just articulating falls in line with that, where, again, the opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy. Like
Right.
if you feel apathetic to somebody, it's nothing. You have no attachment. We're like, we've all seen those shitty action movies where there's a girl and a guy and they're fucking brawling it out in the hotel room. And who knew when they were grappling, they started making out. I feel like that love hate line is very thin. So when people feel animated enough to give you a death threat, I don't know, something really worked there.
They could be besties.
Yeah.
It definitely got to someone. I'll say that much,
You'll be rolling around the DMs, and next thing you know, it turns into a picture conversation. And
God.
No, Isaac, I wanted to make it clear that even though I'm sure IMDb again is the worst way to review a movie, everybody there is a troll. But I hope I'm articulating for people that you fucking knocked it out of the park with The Sand. And I'm looking, we've kept you almost for an hour and a half, and we didn't even get to half of the shit I wanted to talk to you about.
Bring him back.
Yeah, I think we're going to, if you want, I know you're busy, but we should probably have you back again. Because you got a fucking found footage movie that you shot out here in the city that we just don't have enough time to get into, because I watched it and I have many questions.
So, well, yeah, we can, of course, we can pick this up again. This has been fun.
Okay. And man, dude,
there's always so much to cover. I mean, there's like, the entire like sprawling movie, whatever happens behind the scenes, whatever happened on this show or that show. But like you guys were trying to ask me about Pines and about this, and we didn't even get to all that.
Well, I know, and honestly, I'm kicking myself for not trying to get you to expound on the seagull, because the seagulls play an interesting background character in The Sand that we just need to hear more conversation about.
I mean, that's a credit to the writers. They created the seagull element, and the VFX people were able to like film. I mean, we had a lot of seagulls out there, period, on the beach because it's the beach. And wow, look at that. And they were able to film seagulls at various angles doing different things, and then manipulate that footage, basically.
Wait, really?
Yeah. So
I thought it was completely CGI. Like,
no, I mean, a lot of the stuff that they filmed were like they would film the seagulls, and then they created like a base armature and kind of put the skin on the like, on these, virtual armatures of the seagull to manipulate them, like when they're getting dragged under the sand. Obviously, we didn't do any kind of practical stuff with stuff like that, but they were able to, get out there and just shoot stuff and then manipulate what they could from there. So
yeah, you're known as the plant murderer, not the animal harmer.
Oh my God.
No, and for people, again, we don't have a visual component.
No animals were harmed in the making of this movie, by the way.
Clark excitedly reached back and grabbed the toy of the seagull from the lighthouse that we have, that I believe Carlos Customs, former Bay Area custom toy maker, made. And I believe he actually forgot that at one of our film fests at his booth. But
what's funny is in the movie that we were going to make too, there was also a seagull element to that, where like the seagull gets caught inside like the fishing line or whatever, and the fish hook, and gets dragged to death. Which is bad luck on a boat, to kill a seagull in a boat. I guess. I haven't seen The Lighthouse yet. I've been meaning. That's on my list of things to watch. But I understand there's any messing with a seagull in maritime anything is bad luck.
Yeah. The Lighthouse is a 3 for me on the emotional scale of movies.
You're an idiot.
From what I saw in the preview, it looked great.
It's wonderful.
It's overrated. And I go ass over eggs any day.
What?
Eggers and what's the
Ari Aster?
Ari Aster and Robert Eggers. So ass over eggs.
You don't mean that.
I don't. Oh no, I don't. I go eggs over ass.
Yes, you do.
My bad. Yeah. And even though I wasn't a fan of The Lighthouse, I did love The Witch. I think I saw it 3 times in the theater, and
that was solely due to Chris Columbus's involvement. Of course.
And I saw it at the Alamo with like a TV crew, and I fucking hated it the first time. Sat in the back of the theater, couldn't understand a goddamn word. By the 3rd time, I loved it. And the new film, The Norseman?
The Northman.
Yeah, the Northman.
That looks cool.
I don't know. I feel like he's treaded too close to home for me. Those are my people. I did take an ancestry test. I am. Why are you laughing?
Dude,
over
you're
there?
like 36% Narnian. What are you even talking about?
I'm like pure Viking, and I got a little bit of Irish and Cameroon, so I can make any joke I want.
You're like 0.5%.
I'm 1%, but I also have Ivory Coast in there. Anyway, Isaac, I hope you don't regret this hour and a half we stole from your life.
I do not. I do not. I regret nothing.
Dude, Isaac, you're such an open book. We got to book you 70 more times so we can go back through your whole back catalog and get all the scoop behind Queer Eye and Place Beyond the Pines.
What an interesting year of my life that was.
You worked on it for a year?
When I worked on it, we shot 2 seasons consecutively, 52 weeks in a row of work with no time off, a new episode every week. so they could get 2 seasons in the bag. And I give huge credit, not per se to like the show in the creative sense, but it was really important to me at that time to be trying to get into the IATSE local, which is the International Alliance of Theatrical Stagehand Employees. And it's not easy to get into that. And I actually got walked in on that job. I'd been studying to take the test. And as the show gained popularity, the union actually like brought all the workers into the union on that show. So that show, like, in a way, lives in a very important place in my past as just part of like what became my future of being able to like work in the film business and make my bread and butter and go to. That's another thing too. I feel like if you are a director or you're like a writer or you're somebody who's trying to produce your own films or something, you being on set can be like being in master class every day if you're paying attention. If you want to just treat it like a blue collar job, you can do that too. Make your money and go home and just, whatever. It doesn't need to mean anything. But for me, I feel like when I'm on set, I'm like trying to like sponge everything up. And so I give big credit in a way to Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. I was actually asked to be on the show twice. I know you guys, the public can't see me, but they were always like, Isaac, why don't you let us make you over? Trim this up, trim this back, whatever they want to do. And I said no.
Why not? Come on, you seem like you're a lot of fun.
That's got nothing to do with it. I said, guys, I have big aspirations. All right, I'm trying to make the sand someday. Okay? Yeah, I can't be known as the Queer Eye guy. All right.
Well, fuck, Isaac. Do you have any plugs? Anything? Or do you have a movie in the works? I'm a little bummed out that The Sand seems to be your only like feature where they gave you a good amount of money. I'd like to see what you would do if you could just, create the whole canvas on your own.
I mean, yeah, there's always different projects that, we're trying to gear up to do a new feature. I'm working with some like new producers and, they think that they can get a decent sized budget. So we're just working on that right now. Actually, between the break, I'm like trying to, work on the rewrite of the script and get it punched up to a place that I think maybe we're ready to try to take it out. And, like there's a number of scripts that like we've written, or if they like have come close to being made, and if they are they kind of achieve at a certain level, then they get put into that kind of top tier category of something that like could be made if we were trying to move forward doing something. Probably the most important thing that's happened to me happened a few weeks ago when a script that I wrote with my brother and another guy actually made it onto the blacklist, which is like,
oh hell yeah, congrats, man.
Thank you. And that was like like a very nice feeling of like accreditation from a lot of other like gifted writers and people who have made that list. It's a very hard list to get onto. Not to sound like Rudy Tooty here with my own horn, but I was like, it was like a big deal to me, quietly, to like actually have like got the recognition to get on the list. So that was something that like I don't know how that translates into whatever is going to happen next, but in the short answer, yes, there's definitely projects and things that are in the mix, and we're pursuing those. So I just can't say too much about them right yet. So,
also,
but I haven't given up, if that's what you're asking. Right?
No, and I'm just curious if you would go horror or like art house, because I feel like you've got a lot of ideas and talent in there, and I would love to see what like an A24 picture made by you would look like.
I mean, I have horror scripts. I love horror. The horror is right up, never far from what I want to be doing with myself. I also have like, scripts that are in different like genres and stuff. We did complete a short, actually. We completed shooting a short, which is just kind of finishing up in post, that we're like, that I'm really excited about. It's called Time Travel Chicken, and is exactly what it sounds like. It's this kind of almost like it's veering a little bit into like action, horror, sci-fi, about this woman who starts seeing a new therapist, and the woman tells her to like take a personal inventory, and she decides she wants to start eating meat again, and asks her husband if he'll go buy a live chicken so she can kill it, and the chicken turns out to be this time traveling super weapon.
Charlie, are you listening? That sounds right up your alley. Well, dude, Isaac, you fucking rule, man. I love you.
Dude,
how can people reach out and give you death threats?
I mean, anyone can find me on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to find out. You just look me up by name, and there I am.
Anything else? You got no TikTok or anything?
No, I don't do TikTok. I sometimes, I have a Facebook, but I haven't really been checking that very much. Facebook's a little bit on the outs with me. I don't like appreciate the company it's so much. So even though I know Instagram is run by Facebook, whatever.
Yeah. Did you switch to Parler?
Yeah, exactly. But no, you can always find me there. I don't really do TikTok, but not to sound like such a Luddite about it. I just haven't really. Maybe I have an account. I'm not sure. I don't go on there very much.
Yeah, we don't do TikTok either. Actually, Clark has a TikTok.
I've been on it once.
I like it. Somehow you seem to imply that you're like, we are big TikTokers and you're not.
No, not at all. I don't fuck with that China app.
Yeah, no, I don't TikTok too much, but yeah, you can find me there. And I don't know, I know I don't have anything to add, but we should catch up again. I'm sure there's more to talk about.
For people listening, I have a page of notes for a movie we didn't even get to, so we'll be bothering you in the future.
Okay, very good, guys.
Thanks, Isaac.
Love you, man. Thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely.